So the last of the miners went up for auction. The priority dealer threw it up there. Got in a bidding war between the guy with priority and the only other person who was bidding on it is, I guess, my third player, because remember I go kind of in the wrong order. It ended up going for $345. That $330 would be its base. It's not that it's a particularly valuable location. It's that there's nothing else really to do with your money at this point. I was trying to debate, does it make sense to buy a miner? Now this is based on my knowledge of other XX games. Does it make sense to buy a miner or to float a new corporation? Well, you can't float a new corporation. The fours aren't out yet. So, that kind of cleaned it up, and it said, well, first operating round, it's going to drop back. Second operating round, it goes forward, and then I can merge, and I don't really lose anything no matter what I do. Yeah, I lose what I lose for starting a corporation, but it's the only way that I can get something that I think is valuable on the board at this point. The other option, of course, is there are public corporations available. So those shares are going to sell during the stock round. That's what actually kept the guy who's holding the Grand Russian out of it, who had a pile of money too. He started thinking, well, if I spend $300 on that, somebody will steal my railroad. And that would be almost guaranteed to happen. So the people holding the president's certificates to the public corporations can't really afford to bid on this. By the way, I forgot something. Not that anything's happened, but these go in the treasury, and they will, whenever shares are purchased, they're purchased directly from the treasury. So that's a possible influx of cash. That's another reason why the players don't really want to throw money at these things, because they are going to be helping other players by funding the corporations. So it was kind of a, let's get as much money as I can onto this. Now, not really. They certainly would have both rather gotten it cheaper. The initial bid on this one was $300, and you never really want to go above the price, although it's got almost enough money to buy a 4-train outright. It'll have to take a loan, and a 4-train's going to last for a while. Okay, so there I am at the end of the stock round. And this was kind of debatable to me. I don't like not having money invested, so everybody went and bought shares because that's what I'm used to doing in an 18XX game. But you're really risking your company, your miners, I think, by throwing an influx of cash into the corporations. Now, it turned out the owners of those two corporations had enough money to buy 40% each. That's probably enough to force trains out. So I don't think it hurt anyone particularly. However, there's sort of this, I don't know what I'm doing, feeling about the whole thing. The only investor who has 2 shares is down here. He was the guy who was involved in the bidding on the Samara Vyazma. Everyone else grabbed a share of the Grand Russian. Why the Grand Russian? Well, the other one has the Odessa bonus, which is kind of cool and everything, but when it comes down to it, controlling Moscow is a lot more important, I think. So that looks like far and away the more valuable investment. And they're both sitting at the same spot, 135, so nobody could squeeze away and get an extra share or something by buying the other company. So I guess we're going to start the operating round. And if I understand correctly, I'll look this up obviously, all the privates pay out first, then all the miners go, and the corporations go last. So we're not going to see the corporations, oh, look, I'm at 135. I go before everybody except this guy. That's not going to be the case. The corporations have to wait. And that's kind of like an 1835 feel to it, except the miners have stock value in this as opposed to just, hey, I'm number one, I'm number two. All right. Normal XX skullduggery at work. Samara Vayasma laid track. Rather than buy the first 4 train, which they had enough money for, they spent all that money on the Nikolaev and bought a 2 train. They know they can get away with this. And the reason is, the only company coming next is the Moscow Brest, and it doesn't have enough money, they think, I'm pretty sure, to buy the 4 train. Now, once the 4 train's bought, no one can buy additional trains on these miners if they already have a train. So this is sort of a one-time opportunity. On top of that, all the 2 trains are going to go away, and all the companies that only have a 2 train at that moment fall into the Russian State Railroad. And I made a few mistakes. Just before this, I had to rewind because I was like, oh crap, if I crash that, the Nikolaev goes down, what's going on? Chalk it up to not understanding what the situation is. But yeah, these guys are losing their companies. Now they're going to get some cash or whatever, but they're going to lose their companies based on the fact that they didn't plan and do mergers when they could do so. This company is safe because it's a corporation. It's not forced into the nationalized railway. So we look at the table after this. Everything is just decimated. There's the Russian National Railway. I think other than the 2 people who formed corporations to protect their holdings, everyone has had something nationalized. Luckily no one's had more than 1. They were kind of careful not to have that happen. But yeah, I mean, you took a hit for creating a corporation, but it's nowhere near as big. Now these aren't wiped out. They produced cash. They produced cash equal to, you know, the share value with each minor company counting as 2 shares. After the public companies run this operating round, then the Russian State Railroad gets to try to run. And essentially it doesn't build track as far as I can tell or lay tokens, although I think it gets a Moscow token. I may be wrong about that. It may only get one if somebody crashes Moscow, but has to hold a token in case of that. But it's slowly, becoming a kind of position across the board, holding a lot of track. Now, if the miners don't get cleared out when the 6th train comes, and they don't have a train, same effect takes place. If they're not corporations by the time the 8th train comes out, they go automatically. Alright, well, we're going to see what effect this has, but I feel like I wasn't properly prepared for it with any of the players, really, so the game is definitely going to be skewed, and those of you who've played it before are going to look at it and say, wow, what a bunch of idiots that one person is. Okay, so all the miners ran, pulled their income in, and then the corporations ran. The Great Russian actually paid out because it already had a train, and it managed to buy a second train. So now it's running a 3 and a 4 train. No bonuses, but it is running out of Moscow, which is cool. The MKV bought a 4 train. Kind of low on money at this point. And then the Russian National had enough cash on hand to buy itself a 4 train, which is kind of weird. Some of those minor companies were really, really close to being able to buy the next train up. If they had gotten another run, they would have been able to crash things. And I can't flip that with one hand. That's going to take 2 hands. And we're going to move to the merger round. I don't know if anything's going to happen. I got to look. So second operating round in that one is done. And everybody pretty much ran as hard as they could, paying out whatever. No, I haven't run them yet. I'll have to run the Russian Railway. No big deal there. That's just going to be cash and probably a train purchase. The thing we did see, though, was the Grand Russian coughed up the 550 for a 5 train, which opened up Moscow to be upgraded, and the MKV managed to take advantage of that. Big payout, 28 per share on the Grand Russian, only 20 a share on the MKV, but that's with just 1 train. It's a pretty potent little rail right now. One thing, I don't know if I've got it kicking around somewhere here. I picked up, my mess. The unofficial fact. This is almost as thick as the rule book, maybe as thick. But it's clarifications of a lot of issues. The only issue it doesn't clarify that I have a question on, and really the only thing that I had a real question, everything else I think I got from the rule book when I read it. The only thing that I haven't clarified yet is, can I go through that empty space in the city? I think the answer from how that interprets things is probably a no, but I really don't like the fact that there's no dot there if I can't go through it. That would really disturb me. Anyway, back to where we are in the game. I'm gonna go to not stock round yet, merger round, and at the very least, I'm guessing that the M&B, which is over here, is gonna convert because it can't make share prices anymore, and it might as well start a new company. Everyone else has no real reason to do that yet, I think. Although people with 3 trains may be worried that they don't get a shot with the 6s. Maybe they don't want to crash into the National the way we saw everybody crash in on the last after the last stock round. So there's definitely some worry there. If you're holding just a 3 train, maybe you do want to form a corporation right now. We saw so much ugliness there, and I think I'd have been better off forming new corporations with most of those players. Okay, onward. Okay, it's the end of the merger round, and I discovered a problem I had. I had been confused as to what had happened. The TR railroad down here, I had accidentally removed the KB token instead, and then I ended up not running it in the last round because of that. I think that's the extent of the error. I tried to figure everything out. Pretty sure that's what it is. Anyway, here I am in the merger round. We had 2 mergers happen. One was the old Moscow Bray turned into the Moscow Kursk and Nizhny Novgorod, which is actually here. Not a great location, but unless he had worked with someone, maybe the Moscow Kursk, for example, he wasn't going to get an improved line. He was all the way at the top at the 165 mark. Any improvement would have reduced stock value. That was kind of the problem for some of the others too. So the Nikolaev converted into the MK. What is that? Moscow and Kazan. Over here where the Nikolaev was. He had the option of throwing the Donetskin because Moscow's a full city now, and they actually, I believe, connect. Running this way. So, or the other way. But what would have happened in that case is he would have been at 270, and the highest you can start is at 200, so he would have been throwing away some stock value. So he just converted the 1 over. Because it's not a merger, he can't buy extra shares immediately, but he'll get that option over in the stock round. That's something I kind of forgot about when I did the 2 mergers, was these 2 guys had an opportunity at that moment to grab more stock. It didn't matter because those mergers were done just before the stock round, so they didn't really lose any opportunity, and they weren't making a combined deal, so their company couldn't change hands that way. So those are the only mergers that happened. I looked at the other companies then. So the Donetsko's thinking, okay, this is kind of a crappy company. I'm willing to not lose stock value, lose the extra certificate, and get my full cash back if things break that way. The other people had more interesting questions, though. So, for example, Kiev Bray and Vladikavkaz, or Vladikavkaz. Again, combining them would lose a little bit of stock value. That would have gone up to 230. They each have a 3 train, so they could well end up over here in the Russian National. But they don't connect, so they couldn't merge because Kiev has been cut. And combining them or running either one as a separate company just doesn't look that valuable. It looks more valuable to reinvest the money at this point and just let that stuff slide into here if need be. Neither one has a ton of money on them. Neither one's terribly well positioned. It just seems better to either see, hey, can I get 2 more runs out of them? Can I not? I don't really care. Similar thoughts? The Katrina, sitting on a loan, not much money. Hey, it's on a city that's really cool later in the game maybe, but right now it's just not showing enough prospect to start a new corporation off that. And it may well look a lot better after 2 more operating rounds when it's over here. Who knows? Moscow Kursk. This one's a harder call. This one I rolled a die on because it's sitting in a good location. It's got the Moscow marker, the bonus minor. It looks like a promising corporation, but so many people didn't float. And those who did are largely the ones with the So I think most of this investment capital is already bespoken. I think this pile may go. This pile's under the control of this player. He can choose whether or not to float a company. He's got his own fate in his hands. And everyone else holds a corporation. He's kind of gambling. They're not going to want to start a new one at this point. We'll see what happens. I'm not sure. All right. And yeah, I moved it on to the stock round. And I'll load this guy up.